I'm Alan Watt, and this is Cutting Through the Matrix, talking about the century of change, how we're going into a planned society, a world society. Everyone knows what family planning is. It's a term for abortion, basically. And a world society is to basically follow the same mandate where population is to be strictly regulated. And the United Nations has already said in many documentaries and many of the publications that China is a model state for the world to emulate. But what is China? It's supposedly still a communist country run by a form of dictatorship of the proletariat. And yet, as if by magic, and we know it was planned by the West since they created the modern China in the first place, it suddenly became capitalist in no time at all after the GATT Treaty was signed, and the West moved all its factories over to China. Now, no country would do that. You would never move your main factories, especially those to do with metal workings and so on, stuff that could be used for war. You would never move your prime method to defend yourself over to supposedly your main enemy's camp and give it to them on a plate. That tells you there's no threat from China. It's owned lock, stock, and barrel by the masters who run the Western world already, you see. That's a clue to it. But depopulation is a prime mandate. I've read so many articles from different organizations, Optimal Population Trust and so on, big foundations, all backed by all the other big foundations. And there's thousands of foundations that are actually fronts, each working on a specific aspect of the social spectrum. That's their speciality, and lobbying governments. But they're all funded really from about 5 or 6, 10 at the most main foundations, the real foundations. These foundations had no problems at their start-up telling the public what they were all about, and it was to do with eugenics, getting rid of inferior types of humanity, and creating the Superman, as they talked about, long before Adolf Hitler grabbed it and ran with it, because the Soviets were already running with it before Adolf came along. The depopulation is a big, big thing, and I've talked before and read so many articles about the ways to kill off people. I've gone through even the CBC's documentary on the disappearing male. After I mentioned that it was pulled from the CBC, so I found another link where it was up elsewhere. Last week I mentioned an article from the Globe and Mail, and boom, the next day it was pulled again. So I found an alternative link to another article about the same kind of thing. It's amazing if when you attract attention to that which is already publicly made, but you tell the public what to think about it, that's when they pull it. You see, Brzezinski was correct. He says, shortly the public will be unable to reason for themselves. They'll expect the media to do the reasoning for them. So when you point out the obvious, what should be obvious to them, they start to think about it and take it seriously. If there's no comment made on something, the public will not react to it. So everything that's published really is just a legality because you acquiesce to it by your silence. It's all legal terminology they use. I've gone on and read articles from mainstream medical journals about the incredible sudden increases in allergy, 40 to 50% now, total allergy syndromes bursting out all over, the obese population, the new diabetes that's sprouting everywhere, everyone suddenly becoming diabetic and overweight and all the rest of it, and coming down with all kinds of cancers, yada, yada, yada. And I've read many, many articles, the mainstream articles and medical articles about them, and how it's a big mystery to the medical profession that it's totally funded by the pharma industry, which is also the chemical industry. Here's an article that shows you that what I've been talking about is all coming to pass. And when I've been stating the obvious for so many years and being neglected, it'll now take some people will take notice of it now that it's coming out from other quarters. This is from FSO editorials. U.S. Doctors Association calls for moratorium on GMO foods. The Modified Foods by William Egdahl, May 21st, 2009. American Academy of Environmental Medicine has just issued a call for an immediate moratorium on genetically manipulated foods. In a just-released position paper on GMO foods, the AAEM states that GM foods pose a serious health risk and calls for a moratorium on GMO foods. Citing several animal studies, the AAEM concludes there is more than a casual association between GMO foods and adverse health effects, and that GM foods pose a serious health risk in the areas of toxicology, allergy and immune function, reproductive health, yeah, they're sterilizing you, and metabolic, physiologic and genetic health. It literally causes cancers. That's what you mean by genetic health. The report is a devastating blow to the multi-billion-dollar international agribusiness industry, most especially to Monsanto Corporation, the world's leading purveyor of GMO seeds and related herbicides. I'm reading this, but I'll tell you one thing, they're not going to change it. It's a mandate, it's a must be, because you see, it's causing the very things they want it to cause. They know at Monsanto what it does, because I've read articles from Monsanto where even their own staff won't have got their cafeteria set up, and they will not use Monsanto's foods. They feed their own employees. In a press release dated May the 19th, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, which describes itself as an international association of physicians and other professionals dedicated to addressing the clinical aspects of environmental health, called immediately for the following emergency measures to be taken regarding human consumption of GMO foods. Number one, a moratorium on GMO food, implementation of immediate long-term safety testing and labeling of GMO food. Physicians to educate their patients, the medical community, and the public to avoid GMO foods. Physicians to consider the role of GMO foods in their patients' disease processes. More independent long-term scientific studies to begin gathering data to investigate the role of GMO foods on human health. We've got plenty of evidence. The AAEM chairperson, Dr. Amy Dean, notes that multiple animal studies have shown that GM foods cause damage to various organ systems in the body. With this mounting evidence, it is imperative to have a moratorium on GM foods for the safety of our patients and the public's health. The president of the AAEM, Dr. Jennifer Armstrong, stressed that physicians are probably seeing the effects in their patients, but need to know how to ask the right questions. The most common foods in North America which are consumed that are GMO are corn, soy, canola, and cottonseed oil. The AAEM's position paper on genetically modified foods can be found, and then give you the link for it. Now remember, this soya stuff, for instance, is in everything, including all the candies that you eat. The paper further states that genetically modified organisms technology abrogates natural reproductive processes. That's sterilizing you. Selection occurs at the single cell level. The procedure is highly mutagenic and routinely breaches genera barriers, and the technique has only been used commercially for 10 years. Actually, it's been longer because Canada was already on it for 10 years when we found out we were the test guinea pigs and no one had told us. The AAEM paper further states several animal studies indicate serious health risks associated with the GM food consumption, including infertility. Well, you see, this falls right in with the agenda, doesn't it? What a coincidence. Immune dysregulation, which is all the allergies that you have and the constant recurring infections. Accelerated aging. I know surgeons who have told me, surgeons who do heart and lung transplants, who get the best donors, supposedly young, in accidents, etc., tell me that when they open them up, they're like old men inside. Aging diseases. So here it says accelerated aging. So they know this at the top. Every surgeon knows it as well. Dysregulation of genes associated with cholesterol synthesis, insulin regulation, major diabetes, cell signaling and protein formation, and changes in the liver, kidney, spleen, and gastrointestinal system. That's pretty well everything, isn't it? They add there is more than a causal association between GM foods and adverse health effects. There is causation as defined by Hill's criteria in the areas of strength of association, consistency, specificity, biological gradient, and biological plausibility. The strength of association and consistency between GM foods and disease is confirmed in several animal studies. There's also plenty of videos up on Google about this kind of stuff. They have been for years. One was from a farmer in Germany who fed the modified corn to one set of pigs. They all became sterile. Put them back on the normal corn. Within a month, their sperm was all back to normal. They know all this stuff at the top. This is a mandate. That's why we're all on the stuff. And they've altered more than just what's been mentioned here. I want people who have been following this kind of information to send me lists of all, and the proof of all the things that's published as being modified. I want to have them, and I'll read them on the air to let the people know what to avoid. It says GMO is toxic. The AAEM paper should give grounds for official rethinking of the current quasi-laissez-faire regulatory stance to GMO, in which the solemn word of the GMO seed companies such as Monsanto's is regarded as scientifically valid proof of safety. I'll be back with more on this after these messages. Hi folks, I'm Alan Watson. We're cutting through the matrix, reading an article from the FSO editorial on GM foods. It's no news to those who've been following it for years. As I said already, before I continue with another part of the same article, I'd like for people who have proof, published proof of what else has been modified in the food chain to please send it to me, and I'll compile a list of them and read them out over the air to try and alert the people as to what to try and avoid. I think they've done it in almost everything that's out there commercially available to the public, to be honest with you. It's a must-be, as I say. At the top of this whole pyramid system, there's no democracy. There's only one big corporation really running the world. And all the other parts, including Monsanto, are just specialized branches of it. Isn't it odd that Canada, for instance, admitted when it burst out in Britain that we were the guinea pigs in Canada for all this stuff without being told, that the Canadian government had made a secret deal, and this was published in the newspapers after the fact, a secret deal with Monsanto to test it out on Canadians. Now, they'd already done all the animal testing long before that. They knew what it did to animals, which presumably would do the same thing in humans. Of course it does. When suddenly you have allergies, suddenly you have massive increases in people with diabetes, various aging diseases, etc., and cancers, you have to see and look into what has changed. What's changed? What do they consume that's different? What inoculations did they get that's different? It's quite simple detective work. It doesn't take a genius to figure it out. But the fact is that they've avoided all this stuff like the plague. It's a must-be. Whether this study will go anywhere, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it falls in with the world agenda for depopulation. To continue with the article, this last little part, it says, specificity of the association of GM foods and specific disease processes is also supported. Multiple animal studies show significant immune dysregulation. Your immune system is shot, including upregulation of cytokines associated with asthma. Asthma is rocketed through the roof. I've read so many articles. Allergy and inflammation. You know that cough you can't get rid of? Plus the spraying you remember too from the skies. Animal studies also show altered structure and function of the liver, including altered lipid and carbohydrate metabolism as well, as cellular changes that could lead to accelerated aging and possibly lead to the accumulation of reactive oxygen species, that's ROS. Changes in the kidney, pancreas, and spleen have also been documented, while your pancreas is due with insulin. for diabetes. A recent 2008 study links GM corn with infertility, showing a significant decrease in offspring over time and significantly lower litter weight in mice fed GM corn. It's also been done, as I say, with pigs in Germany. And if you have a low litter weight, that means there's less chance of the young to survive very long. This study also found that over 400 genes were found to be expressed differently in the mice-fed GM corn through genetic alterations within your body. These are genes known to control protein synthesis and modification, cell signaling, cholesterol synthesis, you've all got high cholesterol out there, and insulin regulation, you're all becoming diabetic. Studies also show intestinal damage in animals fed GM foods, including proliferative cell growth and disruption of the intestinal immune system. This is all known at the top. So why are they pushing it, and they even want to push more of it? Why are top politicians across the Western Hemisphere saying we've all got to go GM? Why? One thing is for sure, they don't eat it at the top. When Tony Blair passed the law, they're going to have to accept it in Britain. He made an exception for their own massive, they call it a cafeteria for the politicians at Westminster, at Parliament. This massive, glitzy place they call their cafeteria. We'd have fantastic meals we'll never dream of or never mind see. But they said that they wouldn't use it for the politicians. They'd have normal food, non-GMO food for them. So why did they have to get that, but we have to get the other stuff? It's because it's a mandate, that's why. Simple as that. Simple as that.